Welcome, everybody, to another episode of Get Paid for Your Pad. Today, I have a friend and somebody who has been on the podcast before, actually, episode number 200, which we recorded in October 2017, so almost 5 years ago. His name is Toby Doré. Is it Toby Doré or is it Toby Doré?
Doré, yeah.
Doré. I said it right. Boom. Awesome. Toby is the founder of Cajun Stays out of Louisiana. He's a full-time sports psychology professor at the University of Louisiana as well. He also has a travel blog, Cajun Traveler. You and I have actually met in Amsterdam, or yeah, it was in Amsterdam, was it? Like a couple of years ago. And the topic for today is how to transition to 30-day plus stays. That's a tactic that Toby used during the COVID pandemic, actually, just to keep his business alive. And he's now having some of his apartments putting them back on the 30 plus day stays, because it's the fastest growing category on Airbnb. So it's definitely potential there to start doing that model. Toby is also he was also in the first class of Legends X, and he's the co-author of a book that recently came out called The Hospitable Hosts. And he has over 5,000 reviews on Airbnb. So, Toby, I'm excited. Welcome back to the show.
Thanks for having me, Jasper.
Man, it's almost 5 years ago that we chatted last time. A lot has happened since.
Yeah, quite a bit. So, one of the things that I recall about, being on the podcast way back in 2017, was it right? Yeah.
That's right.
And then we would message each other every now and then. I know I got heavily involved in here in the city. I remember getting involved. They were trying to figure out how to collect taxes, and I got into a lawsuit, and they just kind of basically pinned me down because I was advertising, had all this stuff going on. And then the pandemic hit, and that's when I really remember reaching back out to you, and you were like, look, we got this program going called Legends X. And, the immediate impact that I had was that when we started the program, within the first few weeks, if anyone who's had a company during that time, when Airbnb canceled all of our reservations, and I think we were about 12 properties at the time, something like that. We added about 4 more just over the course of Legends X, because we were already working on some other properties. But the topic came up of thinking about temporarily converting to 30-day leases. And so that's one of the things that really helped us out a lot, saved us, was that as we were scaling in a number of ways, because not only were we able to secure some people, they were wanting to quarantine some of the people were coming in town, and we got about 4 long-term bookings really quickly through that strategy. We hired an attorney. We paid about $2,000 for this attorney. It was something that he had never written up before. And we basically said, look, if anybody comes to us and wants to book 30 days or more, then they have to sign the contract, pay a security deposit. But it was unique because they could book as little as 1 month and as much as 12 months or more. And then the lease, they had to put down a security deposit, but we continued to pay all the bills, keep all the furniture. We had a little checklist for smaller items like coffee makers and even like a mattress or something like that. We would just scratch it off the lease, and then but if they moved out, according to the lease, if they moved out before the 6 months or 4 months or whatever they asked us to write on the lease, then they would lose their security deposit, because we were blocking our Airbnb calendar. We didn't want to move furniture out because we wanted them to be ready. If they decided to move out early, or even when they finished their lease in one day, we wanted to convert that back to a short-term rental. Mm-hmm. And so it worked out really, really well.
Yeah. Yeah. And as I mentioned, the 30 plus day stays is the fastest growing category on Airbnb right now. And I think, with all the flexibility that people have with a lot of companies allowing their workers to be remote, I think that might only increase in the future, right? Where people are going to decide to live more of a nomadic lifestyle where they're traveling and staying in different places for a couple months at a time. That could be, that definitely could be a very popular lifestyle in the next in the near future. So I'm sure there's a lot of people who are interested in kind of exploring the 30 plus day stays. So I want to talk about some of the pros and the cons of transitioning, and then also like what do people have to keep in mind when they transition. So one thing is you mentioned the contract. You need to have a contract, because the first thing that comes to my mind is, okay, if you let somebody stay for over 30 days, in a lot of places that will give them tenant rights, which means that it might be hard. You're putting yourself into there's some risk of that person not leaving, essentially, right? Was that a concern for you?
So the one of the things that I didn't even realize when we went through the contracts is that um, if um, if you during the pandemic, there were laws here in the United States where you couldn't evict anyone who had a lease, because a lot of these people lost their jobs due to the pandemic. And so there was no kind of like decisions being made or anything. There weren't any no one was going to court over this. It was just, you didn't have to pay your utilities, you didn't have to pay your rent. Fortunately, we didn't have any issues. I took on a client near the end of the pandemic who was doing both short-term rental and 30-day leases. He was not making people sign leases. He was just basically taking the cash, and then when the pandemic hit, it created some major problems for him. He actually had to go and he actually had to go to court, and what they told him to do was to turn off all the electricity and the utility bills, and it actually worked. But they were like, legally we cannot evict these people. I didn't have those problems. And I don't know if there was maybe better vetting of the people. Like I said, this guy didn't he didn't even make people sign a lease, and so I think that helped us out a lot. And then we were kind of just talking a little bit before. It's interesting, after the pandemic, we were able to kind of, even before it really officially ended and travel even opened up, we started going back to completely short term until just a few weeks ago. Um, we started to see a steep decline in Lafayette here. The summertime, the average temperatures are around 100 degrees Fahrenheit. Humidity is in 80-90%. So there's not a lot of events and things going on. We've had a lot of course, things. If anybody watches the economy right now, and gas prices, at least for Americans, is high. And so traveling has really started to drop down. And so first thing that I did was I went and found that lease, and I got 3 of my apartments booked in about 3 days.
Wow. Where do you get the leads? Do you get them from Airbnb?
The lease was written. We hired an attorney during the pandemic.
Sorry, Toby. Sorry to interrupt. I mean the leads, like the
Oh, the
client.
leads. I'm sorry, you said the leads. Zillow. There's a website called Zillow that we use. They actually have a process where the applicant has to actually apply, because this site is set up for long-term rental, unfurnished, not your typical thing that we do, short-term rental. But it's versatile to the point where we were able to do it. So they've got to put their income in, and they've got to answer some questions, and that, I think, helped out with your previous question. So that's what we did. We already had our places set up on Zillow. We didn't even have to redo them. We went up on the prices a little bit, but on the rates, but on the monthly rates. But that's where we found 100% of. Also, I've been in this community doing this for 9 years now. So I do get a lot of Facebook Messenger messages from friends or friends of friends. That happens quite frequently as well. Interested in doing something long-term. And then obviously, what I'm interested is what you said. You mentioned Airbnb and how that's becoming very popular, the 30 days or more. But, the fees is what I'm curious about. If you're paying fees on a percentage for 2 nights, 3 nights a week, that's one thing, but 2 months, the way that's calculated, it makes a big difference when you don't go through the OTAs in that situation.
Yeah.
So I'm interested to see if those policies are already changed, or if or if they're planning on doing anything to reduce those booking fees.
Yeah, that's a good one. I mean, I've personally rented Airbnbs for like, anywhere between 1 and 3 months. But I would always try to find the contact person. So the only times I've booked it on Airbnb was when I couldn't find the contact information of the owner. And usually when people list on Airbnb, if they list for like 30 days or more, if they list for, like a couple months, usually they'll leave there some clues on the listing or on the profile that it's not blatantly obvious, but like, if you do a little bit of searching, you can usually find the person. Because you're right. I mean, I remember I booked an apartment in Hong Kong for like 2 months, maybe like 3 months. And it was like $3,000 a month, I think. And yeah, I ended up paying like $2,000 or something in Airbnb fees or something like that, which was crazy to me, but it was the only thing I could find. So
yeah. And then, of course, when you have the situation where you're booking through Airbnb, it's comfortable for the host but I mean, it's gonna be hard to compete if there are other people doing the same thing as you that are doing something like I'm doing, where I mean, they have to pay a security deposit. I don't even charge, because this is interesting, and I'm not sure if our attorney, it was his idea or something that I thought about, but we only charge half the security deposit half of the month, because it's short-term rental, because they're doing 2, 3, 4 months. If their rent is, say, $1,000 a month, then we only charge a $500 security deposit.
Sure.
And that helps a lot. I mean, I know that, like, if I had to go out, I've been owning a house now for 18 years, but I've signed some leases. So when I arbitrage a unit, this, I mean, I travel 6 to 8 months out of the year overseas. I traveled even more during COVID than I did before COVID. And that was one of the reasons, is because I was teaching online. And I just went to countries, the few countries where we were allowed to go at first. But I move into an arbitrage unit, and I just buy a bed and maybe a nightstand, and I got my backpack always with me, and I've got a storage unit, a little small storage unit that's sitting underneath one of my arbitrage units. So yeah, I just move in and I slowly buy the furniture and fix the place up and get the pictures ready, and get with my VA to help me get everything online, and I'm living there. And then once I'm done and it's ready to go, I'm literally, it's funny because I'm saying this because I'm literally moving out today. As soon as this podcast is over, I'm running over, taking all my stuff out. We have our first reservation at an arbitrage, and I'm actually moving to one of the other apartments that's available.
Right.
And so I've been bouncing around like this for 9 years. And so if you're nomadic, or you're able to do that, I mean, I know it's hard with a family, which I don't have, so most people couldn't do that type of thing. But I'm ready to I'm looking. I've got leads for other arbitrage units right now.
Yeah. So I'm curious, when it comes to the arbitrage units, are you still making a decent profit when you're signing a lease and then you're renting it out for like 2 or 3 months at a time? Like, you're still making a decent margin there? So
this is and I was going to answer this when you asked the question earlier about disadvantage of the 30-day leases. One of the things I'm a little concerned about is, and it's not, I'm still going to be making money off of, for example, my house, I converted my attic and a storage shed into tiny houses or studio apartments. So I am making, those are paid off now. So I am making my mortgage, my insurance, and my utilities. All the utilities are on the same. It's all one complex. I'm making my utilities, my insurance, my property taxes, and my utilities off of the 2 units long term. So basically, the way I look at it is right now, everything I book in the 3-bedroom house, the main house that I originally bought, is profit. And so that answers your question, as opposed to, but also come August, September, the weather's going to start to get cooler. Football season hits. That's, college football festival's going to start up. It's crazy how fast things pick up once the weather starts to cool down. And if I've got these guys in these long terms, I'm still doing okay. But I could be making more money with short term, less than 30 days. And so there's another thing that's happening, and is that TBEX, the biggest travel bloggers conference in the world, is coming to Lafayette in October. And I've seen the impact directly because I've been to the last 3 conferences in North America, and I've seen the impact, what it has, where you've got 700-800 travel bloggers, and then within like a week of leaving this town, there's all magazine articles and blogs and photography and social media. And so it's exciting, not only for my travel blog, but also particularly for the short-term rental business.
Yeah.
So that could be a disadvantage, leaving some money on the table if you've got long-term versus short-term, if you're a seasonal place.
Sure. So when you do these long-term guests, do you agree on a certain time frame up front, or do you just say like, hey, you can extend it on a monthly basis as long as you want?
So the contract says that this is a key part that's different from other contracts. The contract says that with a 30-day notice, either party can cancel the contract as long as it's within the initial terms of the lease. So if we sign, we have someone right now that's in there for 6 months. So if it gets to the 6-month point and they say, I want to extend, and they're paying rent on time every time, but for any reason whatsoever, the contract says, well, no, you sign a 6-month lease, it's done. And so as far as most of the arbitrage leases that I sign, I negotiate 6 months because I want to see if it's going to work out or if there's any problems. And then typically it's the people go month to month after that, after you've done your 6 months. And so I'm actually signing a traditional long-term lease when I'm arbitraging, but my 30-day lease has got some different caveats in there.
Yeah.
Where you can just cancel. Yeah.
Yeah, because I imagine there's a way to focus on these longer stays in the slow season, and then make sure that you have your units ready for to rent that short term once the baseball and the sports or the football, what is it, all the events are back and the temperature goes down.
Festivals and football for us in the fall coming up. That's going to be the thing. It's and so and it's just generally people, even middle of the week events and things like that. We have people who come, all of our houses except for one are very, very close into the downtown area. They're not even on the outskirts of downtown. They are like walking distance from everything. And so we can have people who live 30, 45 minutes away who still don't want to drive home at night after an event, and they'll book an Airbnb or one of our short-term rentals. And again, I by far as I'm aware, I manage, many more properties than anyone else really in this community. And so I've got to kind of have a different strategy. I think I keep, I'm probably one of the few people, if not only person in town, that has a pricing software. And you know, and we have a virtual assistant who like watches it every day, and then like goes to Instagram and Facebook and promotes the places that aren't booked that night. I'm pretty sure there's not a whole lot of people in our community that are doing that. And then just this 30-day lease thing, just like, you know, it's probably not something that most of us here in Lafayette have to worry about. But I can tell you, it really is during the summertime. This is another thing too, is that I've had people managing these things for me in the past, and this is the first time that I've spent a summer in Lafayette, and I've lived here almost all of my life, in 10 years. This is even when I was teaching in the classroom, I was always I mean, graduation, the day after graduation, I would fly out that afternoon sometimes, and then come home. We would have a meeting, always a staff meeting right before classes started, 2 or 3 days. And I did that for 10 years. And so I had a flight booked to Tokyo, Japan, and it was actually canceled because of COVID in mid-May. And so I just buckled down and said, look, I'm just going to sit back. And I just didn't realize how slow it was, and how, you know, like even just, you know, going around in town. But there's more than one reason for that. We talked about the gas prices and the economy and things like that with travelers. So it's really made a big difference to go back to that strategy of the short term.
Yeah. So what's some advice for people who are listening to this and thinking like, hey, I might want to try out the 30+ stay model for some units? Like, what are some do's or don'ts or learning lessons?
I think the big one is first to make sure that you when you meet with your attorney to draw up the lease, that he understands all the aspects of what you're trying to do. And we mentioned a lot of them already on the podcast, and make sure that it's written. It's a unique type of lease to me. It's like you're basically doing an agreement for short term mixed with long term. And I think that 30-day policy where you can end it, and you don't have to commit to more than so many months, more than the months that are actually on the lease. And then have you ever heard of Zillow? Zillow.com.
Yes. Yeah, for sure.
So is it I don't even know if it's international or.
I don't think it's international, but you know, I'm familiar with the website.
Yeah. Now that's not to say that it does a very good job. I mean, but we have we've been doing social media with the company quite a bit. So we can actually make a post on social media. Hey, this apartment is available, you know, furnished, utilities paid, for, you know, 1 month or more. And to just contact us, email us, as opposed to going to our website or going through Airbnb. Mm-hmm. And so yeah, those would be 2 big things, is to make sure you're very meticulous about how the lease is written up, and then secondly, you know, that website for marketing. When I said we post things on social media, we really have had to post very little. We get a lot of traction because there's people on Zillow all day long looking for unfurnished apartments to live in temporarily.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Your apartments are furnished, right?
Yeah. So that's the thing, is I've had people say, can we get this apartment unfurnished? They were interested in booking it, you know, even with they weren't even trying to negotiate the monthly rate. But we said no. And the reason why is because, you know, it's just a quick phone call and say, hey, look, this is a short-term rental. When you move out, we want to convert it back, and we don't want to move all the furniture out and move it all back in. That's not what we're trying to do. We're looking for somebody who needs 2 months, 3 months, 4 months. That's going to save a tremendous amount on both ends, on on the commission from the OTAs, and then also, you know, have the flexibility to immediately convert it back into a short-term rental.
Yeah.
Now, some of the last guests we did, they wanted their own mattress, and they're going to be there for 6 months, and so you know, that was important to them. They took out like a few other things, coffee maker. They had their own coffee maker or something like that, and we just put that in storage.
Yeah. Okay. But yeah, you don't want to empty out the entire apartment.
No, I know. I mean, we actually said no. I mean, like talking about like some of the places have larger beds, and you know, some of the people, you know, even like cooking utensils and pots and pans and all that, they were like, oh, that's great. We just go. They just usually have to put their stuff in storage.
Yeah. Do you offer any type of services during the stay, like a cleaning service or something like that?
We don't, and you know, I've thought about that. You know, I'm been going to a lot of more conferences than even before when I was first starting it, and they were talking about upselling things even for your short term. There's even companies now, many companies now that are coming out that's what their focus is helping guys like you and I upsell. But for the long-term renters, we in the lease, I remember reading this whenever we went and pulled the lease back out, was that there was something in there where we would come in for a certain fee. And of course, it's the size of the house. We have 1-bedroom studio apartments. We have 3 4-bedroom houses. And so the exact amount I don't remember, but it was something like in the area of $25 an hour. We figured out what it would cost, and we would come and do a cleaning for them, you know, once a week if they wanted to, but they would have to pay extra. Yeah, but it wasn't like included. And to be honest, even the short-term people who rent for 3 weeks, we rarely get any requests for anything like that. And people really, I really feel like when people who want to stay in a hotel, that's one of the differences. They almost expect somebody to come every day, but people actually choose short-term rentals because they're like, you know, I don't want anybody coming into my room. And I've stayed in places where they didn't even ask. It just happens. Yeah. And I think people just prefer to like come in. People really like the fact that they just have a key code and they don't see anybody. They come in, stay there, and leave. So.
Yeah. Let's talk a little bit about, you mentioned Hospitable Hosts, the book that you wrote a chapter in. I know a lot of our Legends X students are in that book as well. And then you met up with some of the students as well, some of the other students who are also in the book at a conference, no?
Yeah, so I kind of did this when I went and met you guys in Amsterdam. I had gone up to the northeast part of the United States when we did Legends. And so this thing about, you know, going through the pandemic and everybody getting on Zoom, and then you literally feel like you kind of know these people and you've met them before. And I did this with Legends X. I went and I ended up meeting I think at least 3 or 4 people that were in the training with us, but actually meeting in person and knowing them for 2 years, you know, and it's not just email, you know, we're on video and talking and things like that. But, you know, it's just a whole nother experience to meet someone face to face. And then the same thing happened in Nashville. We went to the a short-term rental conference there. And we kind of got together and say, like, look, this is going to be the event in the United States because there's authors from 7 different countries. And so I think out of the 40 authors, there were about 18 of us there. And we planned to meet up in Nashville. I wasn't planning on going, but I was supposed to be in Japan. And I was going to go to the Philippines to meet my same kind of concept. My plan this summer was to go meet my virtual assistants that I've never met before. And then to get there and meet Julie George and Mark Simpson and Sergio and like some people that Julie was our coach actually. And so, you know, as soon as we got to the conference, everybody's at this rooftop bar and promoting the book and doing signings, and people are coming up and taking pictures with us and stuff like that. So it was really cool to meet those people in person that you knew for a couple of years now.
Yeah. Yeah. I had the same experience a month ago or so in Mexico, where we met with our mastermind members. And, with the same feeling, it's like, oh, I talked to this person so many times. But it's like you said, it's just different when you meet each other in person. And, yeah, I'm excited to go to more conferences as well now that COVID is behind us. Knock on wood that it doesn't come back with.
Yeah.
Yeah, there's nothing better than meeting like-minded people and people in the space in real life.
Yeah, I'm signed up for we use Guesty for hosts, and I'm signed up for Guestyval in Austin, and Sean McGregor is there, so I'm sure we're gonna meet up again. It was interesting too when we got to Nashville, is that there were like 18 of us there, but immediately the Legends X people, like, we kind of clicked together and we sat together during all the conferences. We went out that night together. That was kind of interesting how that immediately happened. And then TBEX is also they do one international and one North America conference.
Yeah.
And so I'm of course going to be here for the Lafayette one here in town. And then I'm signed up for the one in Phuket, Thailand in November. So that's their international one. That's kind of, I've been looking for a niche for the travel blog, and I'm wondering if you've ever heard of anybody doing anything like this. I've been looking for 5 years now. What's going to be my niche? I've tried photography, all these different things. And I was talking to Mark Simpson about this, and I was like, when I was in Colombia, there was a place that I stayed that had 12 units, and they got 100% of their bookings through Instagram.
Oh, wow.
Because they had hired an influencer to come in and promote. And I was like, what if I become the guy who connects short-term rental brands, the companies that are at the conferences and promoting their brands, with the travel bloggers and the influencers, and kind of be the niche of connecting those two.
Yeah.
And so it's something that I'm keeping in the back of my mind, and I can still promote Airbnbs that I stay in whenever short-term rentals whenever I'm traveling around. But I'm making a lot of contacts too in this travel blogging space.
Yeah.
So.
Yeah. I started as a travel blogger. I had a blog, The Traveling Dutchman, which is still online actually. And I've been to those TBEX conferences, and that was actually the reason that I wrote a book about Airbnb, Get Paid for Your Pad, was because I recognized that you have to have a small niche, because there's so many people writing blogs. So if anybody's listening to this, if you ever want to write your own blog, make sure that you choose something extremely specific, because otherwise you're just going to be lost in the masses. Like, no one will actually find you.
Yep.
And
it's
that's
a huge theme.
Yeah, I was just going to say, just kind of tying that back to Airbnb. We just did a workshop for the entire community, and a couple hundred people came and workshopped with us. We taught them some of the stuff we teach in Legends X, one of them being the guest avatar. So kind of tying it into that, any business or anything you do, you have to really understand who your customer is, and you have to target a very specific type of customer, because otherwise you get lost in the masses. And I think that's true on Airbnb, that's true with travel blogging, that's true of any type of business that you do.
Yeah, and it's a theme of the conferences. I also attended 2 travel cons that are put on by Nomadic Matt, and then I went to a couple of TBEXs before the pandemic hit, and it was really the theme. In almost every meeting you went to, they were like, find a niche.
Yeah.
And I got an idea from my friend Cash. He would do his niche was luxury hostels, and I thought that was really interesting. And he was like, man, yeah, he was on a panel, and that was the talk, is how to find your niche.
Yeah.
There was another guy who just blogged about Pittsburgh, and he has 5 travel blogs, but I've got to meet him a few other times since then, and that's where he makes his money. He makes his money through the Pittsburgh
Mhm.
one, even though he's got 4 other blogs, and it's because that's all he blogs about. So
Yeah, and having a blog where you write about your own market can be a really powerful tool, not just to attract guests, but also to attract property owners into your business. Like my property manager in Colombia, he has a blog called the Cali Adventurer, and he just writes about Cali, which is the city in Colombia. And his blog just shows up every time I Google something about Cali, his blog shows up. Right. So
that's awesome.
that's
That's got good SEO. Yeah.
yeah, I mean, that's a powerful strategy. Like if you want to expand your business in a certain market, just starting a blog where you write about your town, like what's happening, what are the coolest neighborhoods, the activities. You just like every week you write one blog post, and over time, within a few years, people are going to find you, right? And that's a really strong powerful way. It's a long-term strategy. It's not going to drive results within a couple months. But if you can keep the consistency and you enjoy writing, then that's a very powerful marketing tool, both for the guest side and finding clients to manage as well.
Yeah, it was. I actually messaged you because I was in Cali when we had kind of that period of the resurgence, and I remember messaging you. I've been to Colombia like 4 or 5 times, and that's one of my favorite countries. And so yeah, I remember getting there, and I was traveling around Colombia from city to city, and I was so excited about going salsa dancing in Cali, and they literally shut it down like the day before I got there. They like put a curfew at 10 o'clock and said no salsa dancing or things like that because we had like one of the resurgence. I still had a great time. There's a Cajun restaurant there, which was also bizarre. So that was pretty interesting. It had like a lot of New Orleans stuff as well, but it was like Cajun food, and the waitress told me that the owner was actually from Louisiana, and married a Colombian. So that was really cool. I remember that was one of my highlights because I couldn't go out dancing.
Yeah. Awesome, man. Well, it was great to have you back on the show, man. Let everybody know where they can find you if they want to contact you or find out more about what you do.
Social media wise, I use the Cajun Traveler as the name of my travel blog, and so we're mainly focused on Facebook and Instagram. That's mainly where my market is, and so that's how people can contact me. It's the CajunTraveler.com. You can click the link on the social media, but Facebook and Instagram definitely. And if you're one of the things about this book, we're not making any profits as the authors. All of our profits are going to charity to help the displaced children that's happening, with the Ukraine war. And so that's something that really changed my mind about getting involved in this project. And so, going through and reading the book, a lot of it is about our stories, but man, I got some advice. Like we were asked to give our biggest tips to end out our chapter, and I got some incredible advice, and even from some of the guys that I did Legends X with, some things that I had never thought of. So
yeah. It was Sean was actually generous enough to send me a copy of the book, so I'm about halfway through. It's cool. It's cool. It's cool to read the stories. Although, like you mentioned, a lot of them were in Legends X, so I already knew them. But yeah, it's awesome that you guys are donating the proceeds. So let the people know where, if they want to buy the book, like where can they go?
Yeah, so there's a link from hospitablehosts.com. Or if you just want to go to Amazon Books, and so you can just type in Hospitable Hosts and it'll pop right up. The day that it came out, it was a bestseller in 6 different categories.
Nice.
And it still kind of stayed on that list. So we had 3 already published authors that were the top 3, the first 3 chapters of the book. So that helped quite a bit.
Got it. Awesome. Well, Toby, thank you so much, man. I appreciate you coming back on the show. It's been almost 5 years, so mark the date, July 2027. I'm going to hit you up, and we'll do another podcast.
All right.
All right, man.
Okay, cool, man.
Thank you
Good
so
to
much.
see you
And
again.
for listeners, thanks for listening. Eric and I will be back on Friday, of course, with another episode. So have a great week.